Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite species of North American rat snake. And at this point, I probably have 100 favorite species of snakes and probably a dozen different favorite species of rat snakes. But these guys are really, really cool. And so, without further ado, this little boy here is an eastern fox snake. And that's what I'm going to talk about in today's species spotlight are the fox snakes. Now, fox snakes are probably the number one victim of North American rat snake taxonomy conflict, argument, and change. We've talked about that number of times over multiple videos over the last couple years, and these guys are probably the number one culprit of the taxonomy issues. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. Now, fox snakes are really cool. They get their name because the very first people that described them, European settlers moving across the continent, who described them thought they're musk, which he's actually really chill, and he's never even once musked me, even when he was little. Said it smelled like a fox den. If for the people who live in cities, foxes have a very distinct, very strong smelling urine that they use to mark their dens, and so they thought musk smelled so much like that. That's where they get their name, fox snake. Now, these guys have a pretty small range, and I think the range actually has a lot to do with their weird taxonomy issues. And their range is very small, especially compared to other North American rat snakes like the grays or the blacks or the Texas/Westerns. So essentially, these guys, there are two different ones. There's the Easterns and the Westerns. This boy's the Eastern. Part of the range, the majority of the range, is essentially kind of the northernmost part of the Midwest of the United States, where Minnesota, over to parts of Illinois, down south to Ohio, supposedly a little bit into Missouri, basically like where the Mississippi River runs, a little bit east of there. And then there is a disjointed part of their range over on the other side of Michigan that goes up into the Panhandle, across Lake Huron, into Ontario. Historically, the Easterns have been over in that little part, and the Westerns are over on the larger portion. Now, these guys in the wild, they're really cool. They are found in all sorts of different habitats. They are found in marshlands, in open prairies, in more wooded areas, in pine barrens, in farm areas. Like, they're kind of all over, even a lot of the times even close to human habitation, like we see from some other North American colubrids like garter snakes or bull snakes. These guys have a bunch of really cool, interesting adaptations that make them a little bit unique from the other North American rat snakes. So when we very first look at him, we can see that this guy, he is a good example of the Eastern variety. But for the most part, fox snakes, both the Easterns and the Westerns, he has a nice little rat in him right now, have this kind of sandy yellow to orange, and then sometimes they're a little bit darker to brown background, and then they're basically spotted for the rest of their bodies. And then the Easterns have a tendency to have a really bright and vibrant head, and the Westerns tend to be a little bit more drab. Then they also have a little bit more keeled scaling than most of the rat snakes. It's actually really close to that of like a pituophis, like a bull or a pine snake. And so because of that, and while they're also sometimes found in the pine barrens, they are confused as a bull or a pine snake. And unfortunately, the darker ones too are also confused as baby-like Massasaugas or rattlesnakes. Let's see if we can get that really close to the camera, and I'm obviously going to do some probably B-roll as well. But you can see their scales are a little bit more keeled, which means they have that extra little ridge in the middle of it, which is very, very reminiscent of those bulls, pines, and even rattlesnakes and things. So unfortunately, that does lead to a lot of that unfortunate confusion with the venomous vipers. Now, these guys, they're an average-sized colubrid. They, average 4 feet, and, a little bit more or less to the other side, sometimes upwards of 5 feet. It seems like a lot of the more northern species, they tend to be not quite as large as their southern counterparts. Like the further south you go, there's more sun, they're active for longer periods, so they can grow to larger sizes. Like in the case of the Yellowstone or the Bozeman, Montana locality bull snakes that are almost like a dwarf species. Now, we talked about that speciation. I brought that up a couple different times about why there's confusion. So for a very long time, these guys were pantherophis. So that's that genus. That's the corn snakes, the rat snakes. That's them, formerly Elaphae. But so that's that pantherophis, and then vulpina. And then for a while, they had the distinction between the Easterns and the Westerns. The Western, and then they became Pantherophis vulpinis. And so the vulpin, the vulpa, that's part of the fox thing. So that's why we call them the fox snake. And then they essentially, what they used to do is that one disjointed population were the easterns, and then the further west, the larger range, well, those were called the westerns. And then in 2011, a group of scientists decided that the Mississippi River that runs pretty far east of that large majority of the range of the westerns was a significant enough natural barrier to distinguish the species between the easterns and the westerns. And I don't necessarily 100% agree with that. The Mississippi River is a very large river. It is very, very large. Anyone who's ever crossed it going from state to state, they know it's really big. But to say that that is the same as like a large mountain range, like the ones that divide Papua New Guinea and in Indonesia, and so West Papua, so Papua New Guinea, there's West Papua, and then there's Indonesia. The mountain range that divides those two countries does actually pose a fairly significant physical barrier, or in some places, like down in South America, where like the Andes divides ranges and things like that. But to say that the Mississippi River actually provides a large enough and a significant enough natural barrier to actually distinguish the two species as separate, I'm not 100% agreeing with that. And in fact, there have been multiple individuals that have been that would be classified as easterns have been found west of the Mississippi, and ones that would be considered westerns east of the Mississippi. So not so much. And in that, they decided to split them up into Pantherophis goidai for the easterns, and then Pantherophis, oh Lord, I'm just going to butcher it, so I'm going to put them right here as always, for the westerns. I always mess them up. I apologize for that. But that's why I always put them up there. And so that's what it is. And even sometimes they'll call them Pantherophis, vulpinis, and then gloidei, and then I'm probably butchering that too, for the easterns, and then the westerns for the other species. So these guys have had well over a dozen different names classified for scientific or Latin names over the last 10, 15, 20 years. But overall, I think they're just amazing little snakes. Now, if you ever decided to want to keep one in captivity, odds are you're probably going to come across a western. Those are much more common in captivity, both wild caught and captive bred. The easterns are considered threatened in a lot of different areas of their range, and so collecting them from the wild doesn't really happen as whole much, and because there's less of a wild population to begin captive breeding programs, both by zoos and zoological places as well as private individuals like me, they are not as common. This boy is in fact a captive bred animal, and this is one that I've been wanting for a very, very long time. In fact, the fairly local pet store to me, I'm pretty far out from a lot of places, had a pair in. They were a related sibling pair, and I would come in every time when I would drive through, when I stopped through coming back down from Denver or coming from out of town. I'd always sit there and go, oh, look at him. And at one point, he actually moved him to the back area where you could see like it was labeled but not really on display, and put his sister on display. He was much more vibrant. Not necessarily sexually dimorphic, with males being brighter than females, but he was definitely brighter than his sister, and his sister sold. And then, hey, Jay-Z, you only got the one left, so he finally talked me into it, which is absolutely amazing. This guy has an amazing temperament. Now, they are kept very similarly to most of the North American colubrids. So, usually a little bit lower temps than a ball python or a boa constrictor. In the 70s to 80s range with a decent little basking spot. They do like to climb because they are found in areas not just in marshes. They will climb. So give them places to climb, give them places to hide, a small little basking spot of ultraviolet light, because these guys, as they get older, tend to be pretty bold. They are active during the day and the night. They really do act like a bull snake a lot of the time. They are so chill. Here, you're just like hanging out. I want to show off your face a little bit, buddy. They're just really, really amazing, cool, very placid animals that are like this perfect hybrid of a rat snake and a bull snake. So cool. They do like to burrow, so deep substrate. Pretty easy setup for these guys. Give them plenty of space. They will use it once we get down the road. Just amazing little snakes. Now, for a final little fun fact, Dave Kaufman, is anyone who watches this channel probably watches Dave Kaufman. He actually went out and did like a fun little herping video in his home state of Minnesota, and he actually found these and did a really cool video. And I'm not necessarily going to link the video, but you've probably watched it, or you can go find it on his channel, where he actually thought that instead of in his opinion, and I mostly agree with him, kind of the stupid distinction of the easterns and the westerns of the Mississippi, why don't we just call fox snakes northern rat snakes, and I do agree with that. But I want to add a little bit of a caveat. Let's keep the historic range of the westerns, so that the big part of the range, let's call those northern rat snakes, and then that one disjuncted range that seem to be fairly separate and are fairly distinctive in most cases, let's call those the fox snakes, or better yet, Great Lakes rat snakes, because a lot of the range does go along part of those Great Lakes around Lake Huron, and I'm pretty sure it's Huron. Let's do that instead. So that way, instead of the kind of dumb distinction, we have the historic real ranges, because basically most of Michigan divides the westerns and the easterns as of right now is their current distinction, because I'm just going to call them that as easterns and westerns. Why don't we call, though, the easterns, this guy, a Great Lakes rat snake, gives a little bit more kind of regionality to it, a better locale almost, because that actually might be a little bit easier for, anyone who's trying to keep up with it, because that they are there, that's the locale. Let's call them Great Lakes rat snakes. And then the other ones, let's call those northern rat snakes. So that's my little 2 cents adding on to what I think is already a pretty good idea. If you guys are looking for these guys in captivity, they are pretty uncommon. They're not very expensive. They're just not very common. You don't see them a whole lot when compared to the Texas rat snakes, or even the Grays or the Everglades, or any of those other really fun ones. But they are available, and as you can see, this guy is super chill. He only ever fidgeted when I was throwing my hand in front of his face. But he's just such a really cool, placid, and chill animal. And one of these days, I'm going to come across an unrelated female to get it for a pair, because I would love to be able to breed these guys, because in addition to him not having necessarily the most vibrant head out there, although that might color up as he gets older, his personality is so chill. And I would love to be able to pass that on as well. It's a nice, cool, captive bred Great Lakes rat snake. Let's start that up, guys. I'm going to start doing that. Maybe I should just start calling this guy that. I'm just going to call him a P Goldie Eye Great Lakes fox snake. And I'll just kind of slowly transition to that. I'll make a baby step it in, right? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have a lot of fun talking about the species that I really do enjoy. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas for other videos, I do make note of all of them, and if I think I can do them, I do. I keep it in my little snake notebook here as always. If you guys enjoy what I'm doing and want to see more, please subscribe, please like, hit that bell notification. You'll see whenever I pop up. And if you want to help support me a little bit more, because I'm trying to do this full time, I do also have a Patreon. I'm working on an actual merch store, because right now I do sell merch like this guy, but right now I'm basically just taking orders and then selling them individually for the large print job that I did a number of years ago, and I sell them at the different expos and stuff that I do. But I am working on a merch store, and I do have a Patreon that has a bunch of different varieties of rewards and patronage levels. With that being said, again, hopefully you enjoy this video. I know I say that all the time, but I really do enjoy this, and I really do hope that you guys get something out of these fun videos that I love to make and love to be able to share with all of you. Again, hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.